Welcome to Finding Light in Grief, the podcast that takes you on a journey through life, death, and loss. We explore the many facets of grief, sharing stories, insights, and practical advice to help you navigate your own journey. I'm Melanie, a coach who specializes in guiding individuals on transformative journeys through grief and loss. I'm joined by my co-host Andy, a grief coach with a passion for helping people live with intention. Together we are here to support and inspire you as we delve into these profound experiences. Whether you are dealing with a recent loss or exploring your own mortality, we are here to find the light in the darkness. So join us as we embrace the transformative power of grief and discover the beauty within it. This is Finding Light in Grief. Hi Andy, good to see you.
Yeah, and we're here. We're here.
We are here. I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. A little bit nervous, I got to say.
I'm super nervous too, but I'm very excited, and and this definitely motivates me a lot as well.
I'd kind of like to say that we're at the end of a long planning process, but it's kind of that's not been the case, has it? We met and we decided that we'd like to do a podcast together, and we're 2 weeks on?
2 weeks on. It's very
Two weeks on, and here we are.
Very proactive, I would say.
Yeah, very. So we're going to spend today just introducing ourselves a little bit, because I think it's really important that people understand us as people and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to just have a little chat about our own experiences. It's going to be fairly free-flowing, maybe a little clunky, because neither of us are experts.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So probably the first thing we need to say is that if anybody stumbled across this is going to be a podcast about loss and grief and death. And we're going to talk about those things, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked lots, and it can be it can be quite, it's very frank, isn't it? Our conversations can be frank.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So, and we're going to talk about some of our personal experience. We've got some sort of lived experience that have shaped us as people, like lived experiences do.
Yeah.
So if anybody's not really into hearing this, then probably not the podcast for them. But I'm kind of hoping that the way we approach things and the way things play out will be really useful for everybody.
Absolutely, especially also for people who would like to understand a little bit more about grief. So it's not just about death and dying. There can be a lot of different type of griefs. So you can grieve an old life you just had before you had kids, for example. You can grieve a job loss. You can grieve a dear pet you just lost. There are a lot of different types of grief, and I think there are so many interesting topics coming up in our podcast, and probably everyone will, or not probably, everyone will experience grief in their lives. And I think it's really important and valuable information they could get from this.
Yeah, do you know the other thing that I'm really hoping people get from this is an understanding that we all grieve differently. You know, that there's no right way, there's no wrong way.
Yeah,
it's very personal. You know, we sometimes see this, don't we? That people have an expectation of what grief will look like, and then it looks completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Don't expect from our podcast that we have the absolute secret method of grieving, because this doesn't exist. So
no, because otherwise we would call it the grief ninjas, wouldn't we? And we're definitely not that.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So you're right.
But probably a good place to start is to say that both Melanie and I are grief coaches. It's what we do.
Yes.
We come at it from really different directions, and we'll go into that in a little bit more depth. And maybe, Melanie, just tell them, how did we meet? Because I'm old and I forget these things.
I'll clarify this. No, I think just to add also, Andy, to you, that we have found each other, I think, because we are very different, and this can be sometimes very inspiring to also see, hear, like experience different approaches. And this is what we would like to achieve with our podcast, to share with the world that even you are so different. Yeah, it can be so helpful to see the other approach, and to see how people deal with grief. Yeah. So how did we meet? Yeah, I have a very, very personal grief story. And I did a coaching course last year to become a transformative coach. And while I did this coaching course, there was a lot coming up in myself about my grief, the grief I went through. And I have decided that I would like to maybe consider going into grief coaching. And I did a bit of research and I found Andy, you as a grief coach. My grief, it's now 9.5 years ago that I've experienced a very big loss in my life. I will get to this in a moment. And I wanted to see where I stand with my grief. So, and I scheduled a session with Andy, and we did we spent an amazing time together. I think very long, like 1.5 to 2 hours, probably, just talking about my loss. And I felt so good taken care of, and it was just amazing to share my story with you. You emphasized a lot, like it was just like you gave me such a secure space, that I felt like I can really express my emotions. So, and then we had another session, and I felt already so much better, and I was surprisingly in a good place. But it was just important for me to see that I grieved well, and that there are no really open questions for me anymore. Yeah, this is how we met, and we stayed in contact. And I'm very, very glad and happy about this. And we kept on connecting. And now we are here doing our first podcast together. So
You're very kind. You're very
yeah.
you're a great coachee. So it was, it's easy. It's easy to work with. I love working with people. I'm all about people. I spent a long time pretending to not like people at all. And then,
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
oh yeah, I was terrible for it. That's why
Oh,
I look the way that I do. That was get away from me. I don't want to talk to you.
and when did this change?
Oh, I think, I did some therapy, and I did quite a lot of work on myself, and I continue to do a lot of work on myself. And then when I started the whole coaching thing as well, I just realized that, well, actually, no, it was probably a realization that actually I really like people, that brought me to coaching, because I've been a paramedic for a long time. It's one of the things that brought me to grief coaching. I spent a lot of time with people at the end of life, or with life-limiting illnesses, or people that have just lost someone, just through work. And also, I did a lot of work with young paramedics,
Okay.
and worked a lot with my colleagues, a lot of mentoring and training and all that sort of stuff. And then I worked in some really stressful environments, because I was a flight medic for a long time. So I used to, bring people back across the world
Oh, wow.
that were sick. So you're with them for a really long
I didn't
time.
know that.
Yeah. So up until the beginning of the pandemic, that's what I was doing. So you end up spending,
Oh, flight paramedic.
you spend a long time with people. And I think I just didn't need to hide anymore. Really didn't need to hide. People used to say to me, this was my standard Andy line. And actually, if anyone that knows me for a long time listens to this podcast, they're gonna recognize this, because people used to say to me, you must really love people to do your job. And I used to say, I hate them. That's why I'm good at it. But it's not true.
So you actually love them. So what would you say, like how long ago was this when you realized that you
I guess
actually love them?
maybe only 3 or 4 years ago.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So for a very, very long time, I used to hide behind this very badly, I have to say. I don't think I convinced anyone.
So everyone knew always that you
Yeah,
love
yeah,
people
yeah.
except you.
Except
Yeah.
me. Except
Yeah.
me. I didn't.
You're never too old and too mature to understand who you are
Yeah.
and what you are looking for.
Yeah. It's
So,
funny, even with the paramedic stuff, I've come to realize now, much later on, that from a technical point of view, I'm probably not the best paramedic in the world. I can do all the stuff,
mhm.
but that's not what I have brought to my patients. It's
So
that
it's
it's that
connection.
connection. Yeah, it's all about that connection. And now I really love it. I really, really love it. I work in alongside my coaching business, I work in general practice. So
Mm,
I speak to a lot of people, a couple of days a week, and I go out and visit people at home or work in a clinic somewhere.
mm.
And I get so much joy now from that human connection that we get. Um, so that's and just doing the coaching thing has just opened that out for me. You know,
Fantastic.
um, and I think also I'm talking now. You're not going to stop me. You know what I'm like. Um, when I coach Melanie, I have to be like really quiet and give her loads of space, and I just want to talk. This is
You just want, yeah. I know this is really hard in coaching. I feel exactly the same. I'm like a very talkative person. I like to communicate. I like to connect to people. So it's something I absolutely love doing, and I like to just hear stories and life stories from people. But I like to comment on them as well. So it's really hard to hold back and. But on the other hand, I also love creating this really safe space for my clients and provide them with just some type of security and safety and something they might not get from their personal environment, because I think there are more people than we think who they don't have like a social network. They don't have really friends or family they can talk to. So I really love giving this to people. But I totally agree with you. So for me, it's also super hard sometimes to not jump in and say, "Oh, listen, have you tried this? And why don't you like, I don't know." But anyway,
But we've
uh,
got this now. We listen.
we've got
They
this
they
now.
can't stop us now. They
No.
can't stop us.
Um,
But
yeah.
just going back to that thing that you were just talking about. I think it's more than that. So I think in the society that we live in now, particularly, because I've noticed a change as I've grown up, and it changes from culture to culture. But listening's not so common. Proper listening. And I think that was when I was at Animus. That was the first thing. I was just like, whoa, this is so powerful.
Yeah. You need to clarify what and who is animas.
Oh, yeah, of course. I forget there are other people here.
There are other people
I'm
here.
just in this space now with
I
you.
don't know what you're talking about, Andy.
So so Melanie and I both went to a school of coaching, and they're a really well respected school of coaching. I think I would say the best school of coaching. I looked at lots and lots and lots of coaching schools.
Yes, I
Um,
mean, too. I agree.
yeah, and they're a transformative coaching school.
Yeah.
So they're looking at really big transformative change.
Yeah.
Sometimes people, if I say I'm a coach, people think I'm like I was going to say people think I'm a running coach, but then you look at me, I'm definitely not a running coach.
Me neither. Me neither. 100% not. Yeah.
But it's a very different kind of coaching, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very
I
different.
think, yeah, if you would like to add something to that.
No, go on.
No, I just would like to clarify one thing, what could be really important or interesting. So we are grief coaches, and I think many people think, oh, but can you coach grief? I mean, is this really something you can do? Is it not something for a therapist if somebody needs help? So there are different different stages of grief, you know, like I've went through a grief training recently, and it was really interesting. They said that 60% of all grievers do not really need any kind of support. And then 30% of grievers do need support like us, grief coaches. And then there are 10% who might suffer from really, really strong type of grief. So they cannot get out after years, and they probably need a specialist, a psychologist, or kind of counselor who is treating them. So, but there are 30%, and 30% are quite a lot of people, and they do need somehow support. And that's what we do. I think that's where we come in, to offer exactly, help in this, for these people.
Isn't it funny? Because when I first decided that grief coaching was what I wanted to do, it was kind of frowned upon, even within the community that we trained with. You know, there were lots of people saying, "Oh no, that's outside of outside of coaching." Whereas now, there's been a really marked change, and some of the really well-known coaches within our community are now going, "Yeah, absolutely, grief coaching is totally valid."
It's super valid. And I see it with clients now. And the transformative part, the transformative coaching, what we have learned, Andy, is actually something really useful, helpful in my practice now. Because when you grieve, I mean, you would like to move forward, you would like to move on. And that's the goal. So that's what we do. We look into the future, and we try to come up with a kind of plan. So how to move forward and how to get back into life. So what do I need to do to achieve that? Of course, we talk about your old story and what has happened, and this is really important to share this. But it's also important to look into the future, and there it's where transformative coaching and grief support works super well together.
Yeah, and also I think, probably worth adding in, both of us, I think we're both self-aware enough that if we feel a client isn't benefiting from coaching, maybe needs
Absolutely
some counselling, or needs some kind of therapy, we're just going to have a really frank conversation with the client. And it doesn't mean that we need to stop working with them, because sometimes we can work in partnership with somebody else.
Yes. This is a very common thing. So I have two clients at the moment. They both still go to therapy, but they also do coaching with me, and it's about grief. So it's and it works so well together. I'm coming up with plans. We are coming up with, so one is studying. So he needs a lot of support in like getting his schedule ready, to learn, to study, to just achieve his goals. And then in between, we also talk about the grief when it comes up. So it's a super good combination, but he has some deep things he also discusses with the therapist, but then he's discussing it with me also. So it's kind of we work together, and it works super well. And it's interesting to see. I mean,
and the therapists are happy with this arrangement. They like it, because the stuff that we do is very different from the work that the therapist is doing.
Yeah.
So, I think the other thing I wanted to say on that is, and I'm sure you've had the same experience, how many times do you get a client that's not a grief client, and all of a sudden, you're at session 3 or session 4, and then all of a sudden, there it is. There's that thing that maybe the client didn't realize. So we talk about 30% of people that are grieving maybe need some coaching help.
Yes.
Probably quite a lot of those don't even realize where this big roadblock is in their life and what's creating it. And sometimes it's grief. And as you say, because grief And loss, there's so many different losses, and we're going to talk about that over the weeks as we come along.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of stuff people don't even recognize as a loss, so
Yeah.
having children, that can be a loss of your previous life, getting married, changing
Absolutely.
jobs.
Yes, yes, there are, yeah. And yeah, and this is holding you back sometimes. So talking about it, so just saying there is a solution, like sharing this grief, talking about this grief, working it through is so powerful and can just lead you to a more satisfying life, and so that you just arrive where you currently are, and with not holding back on something. Sorry. So you hear I'm German, just for all the
Yeah, we should have maybe said that.
we should have said this in the beginning. So my English sometimes is I'm missing words. So please bear with me. I'm trying my best.
But Melanie, listen, I have the darkest London accent, and I suspect when people listen to this, they're going to struggle with. If someone can find subtitles for London English, that might be really helpful. I think your English is better than mine.
So okay, I'll translate you then. So no, yeah, what I wanted to say. Now I
Sorry.
thought about it. I think I said everything I wanted to say. We maybe, you can all hear and listen. We have so much to talk about. It's endless. The topics are endless. We already have a long list of topics we would like to share with you. But as we said, for today, we would like to share our story so that you understand where we are coming from, and what brought us to where we are now, actually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We deliberately didn't put any sort of a plan together for this, other than we were going to do what we're doing. We were going to have a chat. Actually, we've done a bit of stuff already. Don't tell them. They can't know. Because I think that's just part of the way that we connect. I feel like we connect at quite a deep level. And this stuff just comes out. I think we both feel really safe in the conversation. We've kind of forgotten about all those other people already.
Yes, but this is how you should connect to someone. If you look for someone, a grief coach, please make sure you feel really connected to this person, that you feel safe, that you feel secure, that you just have this feeling of, oh, I can let go, I can be very honest, because it is all about honesty. You need to share what you really feel, because to enable to get help, honesty is key. And I think you can just achieve this if you feel in a very safe space. Most of the grief coaches offer like a short call, like a free call, so that you don't need to pay anything for it. So try some out, just talk to a couple of coaches and see if you connect or if you don't connect.
I think that's such a good point, because clearly we're really different, and somebody that connects with me may not connect with you, and definitely the other way around. There's somebody out there that's perfect for you.
Yeah.
And finding them is the thing. And I think I get really upset if I see coaches holding themselves up as being better than anybody else. We're not. We're all just different.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that we approach things is very different, because coaching is a relationship. And it's a two-way thing. And I have said to clients in the past, just don't think we can work together. But just don't.
Yeah, very important.
And I'm happy for that. And the other thing I just wanted to say as well is, and we've had this experience quite recently, is approached by somebody. She didn't feel like it was a great mix. She didn't feel that the connection was quite right. The potential client didn't feel that. I've spoken to her, and I'm not sure whether it will be the right fit. I'd liked her, and I feel there's some stuff there. But you know what? If she doesn't decide to work with me, then I'm just going to put her in touch with somebody else. you know, and we'll keep passing her around until she finds that person that she needs. Because for me, that, you know, it's important. I don't, you know, that for me very much is at the heart of why I do what I do. You know, it's going back to this loving people thing. You know, I do this because I love that connection, and I love what can come out of that space. Yeah, we need to earn a living. Everybody needs to earn a living. That's fine. But for me, it's very much not about that. But anyway, look, we're rambling on. We're getting back to like the stuff we were supposed to be doing in a few weeks' time. So we're going to, I was going to say we're going to run out of things to say, but it's not really going to happen, is it? I know your story a little bit. Tell me what brought you here.
Yes. So 9.5 years ago, or actually now almost 10 years ago, I was pregnant, and it was my first pregnancy with Sophie. That was her name. When I was 24 weeks pregnant, I went to see my gynecologist. So we used to live a bit all over the world, but at that time we used to live in Abu Dhabi. We were just supposed to move to Indonesia. I quit my job, so we were in between countries, and I went back to Germany to see my gynecologist and to have a checkup. And he did a scan, and he said, "Well, I don't think you're going anywhere. Your baby has a very severe heart failure, so there is a massive problem." And so for everyone who ever had a baby, who was pregnant, or even who's trying to get pregnant, knows that listening to this while being 24 weeks pregnant is a really devastating message to receive. So I called my husband, who was still back in Abu Dhabi. He left, like he came immediately, so the journey started. When I was 26 weeks pregnant, I had surgery on the heart of the baby in Austria with a specialist. So it was a very advanced technique to try to save her. It was kind of successful, but it was already a little bit too late. There was a lot of scar tissue built up around the heart, so it couldn't develop and couldn't grow as much anymore as it was supposed to. So basically we waited until I gave birth, like she was born. I had a full-term pregnancy. I mean, she came, I think, 3 weeks early. Yeah, 3 weeks early. But it was very natural. My water broke. We knew that there was still kind of a 50-50 chance that if she would be born, that it maybe looks a little bit better, so more promising, that we could still do some operations. But we decided also, if it still looks like it looked during the scans, we wouldn't operate her, because it looked quite bad. Life expectancy were 12 to 13 years. The first 3 years of her life in the hospital, basically, with a lot of surgeries. And we have decided, if this is the case, we are not going to operate. And so then she was born. I gave natural birth. She was taken immediately to the ICU, but she was normal. She didn't really needed a lot of life support. The next day they told us that it looks as bad as it looked during the scans. So obviously it was so painful, because giving birth to your child, and it was also our first child, it was a pain I've never experienced before. Big loss. And also seeing your baby looking completely normal, and knowing that she will not stay with us, and that I need to let her go, or we need to let her go, was really painful. So, and it was a bit difficult. The doctors were still trying, some of them, to convince us to do a surgery, because doctors are made to save lives. So they don't really see the person or the family's life, what it can make with you. They just are so trained to, okay, if somebody dies, just maybe in the OR or in intensive care, but we did everything we could to save this life. So for them was quite hard to understand that we have both, like me and my husband together, that we have decided we will not do any surgeries. And they said, okay, but if we don't do surgeries, life expectancy might be 2 to 3 weeks. So we said, okay, we are doing this. So, and then we stayed in the hospital. She lived and lived and lived, and she grew and she developed, and it became more painful actually, because I just saw her as a little baby, and I dressed her, changed her diapers, I was feeding her, and when she became 5 weeks, she passed away. So towards the end, she had some seizures, and it was tough. So, but my husband and I, we were holding her, and she passed away in our arms. So it was a very, very painful experience. But so just I will come to the positive side later. I'll just complete the story. We jumped right back into work. So, I mean, obviously we were both not working. My husband quit his job, so we were both not working for 6 months. So we had to actually get back to work, earn money. We were lucky that we had family support. So we moved back to Hamburg, where my husband is from. So our family took really good care of us. And then we went back to the Middle East, to Dubai. My husband found a job there, and I also found immediately a super amazing job. I was so lucky. It was, I don't know, like an inner power who like motivated me to get back, to become stronger. So I was so lucky, very fortunate that I found a great job. So we both moved to Dubai, and I became pregnant right before we moved. But I lost it very early on. And I was relieved, because I didn't want it. It was a total accident. I wasn't ready at all. So, and I lost it naturally. So I was very grateful for that, to be honest. And then we moved. So I worked and worked and worked. And then I reached a point where we both wanted to have another child. We tried, it wasn't working, so we tried more. And then after 1.5 years, I was pregnant again, and I lost it with, I think I was 7 weeks. So I was devastated. My life, I felt like, just ended there. So it was a grief. I mean, it was all the grief I was holding back from the loss of Sophie, that I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore. I couldn't do anything. So I went to talk to my boss. Nobody knew that I was pregnant before, that I had Sophie. So for me, I just ignored the fact that I had Sophie. So, and so nobody knew. I talked to my boss. I told her the entire story. She was very, very kind. She said, "Yeah, listen, don't quit. I will keep your job for like 3 months. Take your time off." And I had a really good number 2 in my team. So I used to work in the spa and wellness industry. So she was able to take over for a while. And then I went on a journey. I went to see a friend in Singapore, which was really fantastic. And then I went to Bali to do a yoga and meditation retreat. And this was absolutely life-changing for me. So it was a very traditional place. They had a guru there. I'm not over spiritual, but I believe that in certain points of your life, you might need things you think they are not for me. But it's just the power of knowing your body and knowing what it needs right now in this moment. So I just listened to what I wanted in this moment. So I saw this guru. He did a lot of like healing sessions with me. I did meditation every day. I did Kundalini Tantra yoga every day. So which was it's also really focusing on the tensions in your hips. So it was so much tension. I needed to release all this. And they helped me, and I was alone, almost no phone. I went to healing springs and just by myself, and it was fantastic. So I came back to Dubai, and I was basically like a new person. I felt so good and so refreshed, and it was the first time that I was really facing my grief, and everything came out. It was amazing. So I'm very, very grateful for this time. And then I think 3 months later, I was pregnant again with Louisa, our second daughter. And we have another one by now who is 4 years old, Carlotta. So they are both 4, 4, and 6, or almost 5 and 7. My body was ready, like the tensions were gone, they disappeared, but it just showed me how important it is to work through your grief. And I have never, ever realized this before. So, and this actually brought me to grief coaching, to realize what I would like to help. I would just like to support and help people going through such a challenging time, and sharing a little bit what I have learned. And as Andy, as you mentioned in the beginning, there is no right or wrong. There is no secret weapon for grief, or how you deal with it. So you listen to my story now. You know that this was far from ideal, but I actually reached a point where I'm converted my grief into something positive. I don't see grief as something negative. How I see Sophie's birth now is very far from how I saw it when she was born or right after. I saw it as the biggest gift of my life. She made me a mom. I gave birth to this beautiful little human being. I learned so much. I became so, is this resilient? No? How
Yeah,
would you say it? So, um, yeah, it's just, I learned the power of love, like loving someone, loving this baby, giving birth, being thankful for this experience, and also knowing that my body can do it. So, biggest gift ever. And this is how I remember her. I remember her as something positive in my life and not as something negative. And this is how I would love to help people to see their grief. Yeah. So this is my story. And I'm very happy to share this story.
I was going to ask you how it feels to share that in
Yeah,
this format. It's a different format to where you shared it before. So
absolutely. Yeah, it was very personal before. But since I work now as a grief coach, and I'm being asked always by my clients, like, oh, can you share a little bit about your story? Because I share a little bit on my website, so they get curious and they want to know more. And I don't really go into a call and say, listen, do you want to hear my story? So, but then when I'm asking, do you have any more questions? I say, oh, could you share a little bit about you and about your story? So I started to share a little bit more about it. And I just think it's really inspiring. And what we would like to do, Andy, is also to invite in the future some guests who will share their stories, their very interesting stories. And I think it can be an inspiration for everyone.
listen, for me, I've heard the story before, and it's such a massive inspiration. And hearing you tell it now, like I'm not crying, which is a good thing. So I'm not allowed to try. That's my rule. No crying on the first podcast.
Yeah, no.
Happy tears, happy tears. But I get so much from your story. I really do, and you tell it so beautifully.
Thank you.
But no, thank you for
My
it's
pleasure.
yeah, it's and I hope people will will listen to that, and they'll feel it the same way that I feel it. I'm sure.
It's your turn now. So I would love
Right.
to hear, because I have heard also a bit about your story, but I think I haven't really heard the entire story. And I would like for our listener to, yeah,
I'm
to
such a
get to know you
shrinking
better.
violet. I don't. And my story. I like this thing around how I love people. I kept my story really close.
Mm,
And actually, although it's long, some of it has only played out within the last 5 years or so. So
mm,
we go right back to the beginning. I'm adopted. So I was born in what they call a maternity and training home. So
mhm,
so my mum went in there 6 weeks before I was born, and she left without me 6 weeks after. And she had her reasons. She was young, she was single. It was a difficult time. Her family was difficult, and she felt the most lovely thing she could do was to give the child to somebody else to look after. Um, and I was born with a name, and then that name was taken away, and I was adopted into another family. And I was brought up in East London. Um, Unfortunately, and my birth mother could never have known this. The the family that adopted me were not. Trying to think of a good word for this. They didn't function very well.
mm,
There were, from the outside they looked amazing. There was this. They were very classically together. They were this nuclear family. Um, and the woman that adopted me, she had her own reasons for doing what she did, but she kind of wasn't equipped for it.
mm.
There was a lot of alcohol abuse and lots of other stuff. And I have a great childhood. I have a great childhood. I wasn't terribly happy. Um, so not a great start. And then I was at school, and I'm a bit dyslexic, and I'm realizing now that I'm probably a little neurodiverse and think about things the way that other people think about things. So this sort of combination of, being different from other people. One of the control mechanisms that my adopted mother used was food. So I was kind of chubby, and again that isolated me.
Mm.
Um, so school years, people say school's best time of your life. I hated it. I hated it. I didn't do well. I struggled on a daily basis. And then I left school, and I was just really lost. I just didn't know who I was or what I wanted to do. I very quickly changed my body shape and the way that I showed up in the world. And then this started, this thing started as a way of maybe continuing my differences.
I think you need to explain these things for everyone who,
There are these things everywhere.
so your tattoos, because some
Yeah.
of you might not see us, no?
No, this is true. This is true. I
Yeah.
forget that. I forget about them sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of went on this journey. I started out in a sort of creative industry, and I loved it. I'd not been creative at school. I found this all afterwards, and I had a thing with photography, but that industry changed.
Mm.
So this was, I've had some loss. I lost my mum, my real mum, um, and I'd been in this place where I didn't get a chance to grieve her, because I was told that no, 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 no. When you're adopted, they destroy all the information. There's nothing left. All there is this piece of paper that says we adopted you. There's nothing more. You can't possibly find out anything about her. She's gone. I don't know if she's dead, whether she's alive, whether I had brothers and sisters, whether she was happily married, where she was, no, any of that. Adoption was very different then. So then I started going through this process of constantly recreating myself to try and find the thing that I was missing. I know now what the thing was that I was missing, but I just kept going through these cycles. I kind of didn't fit in. Friendships were difficult. Yeah, it took me a long time. And then, so I'd not been great with relationships. I had lots and lots of relationships because I was kind of I think I was trying to build the thing that was missing. I met a girl and she felt pregnant. We weren't a great match. There's a lot of difficulty there, but we kind of, this adoptive family was still applying a lot of pressure, and we ended up getting married. And we were young, really unprepared for marriage and a family. She was the same. She had some stuff going on, but we tried really hard. Wasn't terribly good at it. But we had a boy, Sean, my eldest. He's amazing. I absolutely adore him. I've got 3 boys. I've got 3 boys and 2 grandchildren. They're all enormous.
Wow.
Sean and Liam, they work together. They live in London, not very far from where I am now. They do some amazing fitness coaching stuff. I'm super proud of them. Ben's got a little family up north, and he's amazing as well. Very lucky. But my relationship with their mum was difficult. And so, I moved out and I was trying really hard to be a dad, but I didn't really have anything to refer back to. I'm doing some work on that now. This whole, I should know how to be a dad. Oh, well, actually, you didn't really know how to be a dad, because nobody knows how to be a dad. But also, I haven't even got something to copy. And actually, what you wanted to be was something completely different from what you'd had. Anyway, I moved out, and then I was still recreating myself. I was still trying to find that thing, and so I buggered off. I moved somewhere completely, 4 hours away from where the boys were, and moving on, different relationships, not really settling. Not the creative industry I worked in, photography, had changed, and I just didn't love it anymore. That was my passion, and the passion for the thing that I had. We went from film photography to digital photography, and I ended up working in a mental health unit as a nurse. They were just really short people. Somebody said to me, "You'd be great at that," and I was still in this denying that I liked people thing.
So different, also.
Yeah, completely different. I spent a bit of time doing all sorts of things. I put marquees up, and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff that we won't talk about. But ended up working in this mental health unit and working really closely with people. And I found this thing started to happen where I thought I was just being the same, but the patients I was working with, they would sometimes go out, and they'd always want me to go out with them. It'd always be, "Oh, can Andy go? Can Andy go? Can Andy go?" I like it, and we'd sometimes, we might go home to their family, but they felt comfortable, so there was something going on there. And I liked it. But then, being me and still constantly recreating myself, I saw an advert in the paper for paramedics. To come and train to be a paramedic in London. And I thought, yeah, that might be fun. I could do that. Like up until this point, I was really squeamish. Blood, no, didn't do any of that. And I applied. And then I'm in this really weird situation because I'm on this like assessment day, and there are all these people that be like, oh, I've wanted to be a paramedic ever since I was a child. It was always been my dream job and everything else. And they're like, are you the same? And I'm like, no, I saw an advert in the paper and I thought it'd be fun. I got the job. I trained. It was difficult because dyslexic. I've got to do a degree and everything else. I'd already done a bit of a degree, that sort of thing. But anyway, I loved it. I really loved it. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the patients. But I'm holding up. This is where this thing about, no, I hate people comes from. I'd be like, no, 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 no. Hate them.
What an inspiring story. Incredible.
Yeah. Um, and I started to I started to find myself in that space.
Mm.
I'm still having horrific problems with my adopted family, like horrific problems.
Mm.
My adopted mother she'd fallen into, my adopted dad had passed.
Mm.
I didn't grieve that because I didn't, I was disconnected from it, and she just turned into a monster. All of the behaviours that she just held in, all of a sudden she was just like, I don't care anymore.
Mm.
So drinking and smoking, horrifically. And I kind of kept getting tired, getting dragged back into it. I'd be in a relationship, the relationship would fall to bit. She'd be like, oh, I need you. Oh. Yeah. Ended up back there again looking after her, until it all came to a head. During that period, my boss in the ambulance service, she was like, we've got an employee assistance program, and we can get you some really good counselling, and you don't need it for your job, but I know you've got all this stuff going on. So I worked with this amazing counsellor. She was absolutely incredible, and we used to, we'd drive the ambulance up one day a week, and Scott would go, and Scott was my crewmate who I love dearly. He'd go and have breakfast somewhere, and I'd go and do my actually, funny story. About 2 weeks in, I decided I hated her, and she didn't do anything because I couldn't see it yet. So I said, Scott, that's it, done. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
And he was like, "You're so selfish. You're so selfish. All you've got to do is sit there for an hour, and I get to come into London and have a nice breakfast and just to chill for an hour or so. All you've got to do is sit there and talk, and you never stop anyway. So just crack on." He knew what I needed. He knew it was the right thing. He's an amazing guy. And so I did it anyway, and it was amazing, and it changed everything. And I carried on, and then I left the ambulance service and I went off and I did this flight medic stuff, some more education, spending more and more and more time with people, feeling into it way more, hearing their stories, but spending a lot of time, an awful lot of time with people at the end of their life, or that are just lost or have got life conditions. And COVID came along. Everything changed. I stopped flying because there wasn't anyone to fly. And I ended up working in general practice. They needed people to do some clinics and stuff. And it was good. But at that point, I started thinking about what it was that I liked about being a paramedic.
Mm.
And I did a lot of soul searching. And I got a coach. I had a coach because I really wanted to work out what it was, because I loved something, but something else wasn't quite right.
So you were not sure
Yeah,
where you stood. Okay.
no. So I thought, if I can find the bit of it that I like, then I can focus on that bit. Because it was still, I'm saying I was way better at that point, but there was still lots of stuff coming up, and there was stuff still going on with the family, and I was finding it difficult to extract myself from that. And so I worked with a coach who was amazing. And of course, surprise, surprise, Andy discovers that he likes people. Not medicine, not sitting on aeroplanes constantly or driving on blue lights or any of that stuff. I didn't like any of the big technical medical jobs. What I liked was going to an older person that was just had stuff going on and listening, talking to them, listening, hearing their stories. And then I just thought, well, look, I found this through coaching, and for me, that's what coaching was. So it's just like, well,
it just all fell into place.
Yeah,
Now it's
yeah.
all connected with each other, and this is just so fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, and so I decided that I wanted to be a coach. And then I looked and 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 I didn't find what I was looking for. And then I found Animas. Then I found Animas. It was based in really solid psychology. Nick Bolton that started the school, I think, is amazing. The tutors were great. The group that I trained with were amazing.
It's an amazing community. I mean, yeah, and it's a fantastic school. I agree.
And I feel really lucky to have found it. And I carried on from there, and then I kind of, just to finish the story off, because I know I'm going on for ages, because I do sometimes, but there's loads more, by the way. We can talk about some more stuff another point. I finished coaching, and I don't know how you felt, but it felt like there was quite a bounded scope of coaching. It was done in a certain way. There were lots of people coaching coaches, and it was very. And I tried to be that thing. I tried to coach within those.
You fit into this box, no?
Yes, try and fit into that box.
Yeah.
It just didn't really work for me. And then I lost a really good friend of mine, like my best friend, just very suddenly. He passed away overnight. He had a bit of a presence, and there were lots of people that knew him in the public space. He was my best friend. Completely unexpected. And this is all in the wrong order, but don't worry about it. This is the way my memory works. Sometimes it's all relevant. But I lost him, and I lost him in a public circus in the middle of COVID. So it was before I trained at Animas. And I couldn't grieve for him. I couldn't go to the funeral. There were. I woke up one morning to hear the whole of social media saying how terrible it was that he'd passed away. It's my best friend, and I couldn't grieve for him. I had to hear everybody else grieving for him. And there was no space for me. I'd spoken to him 2 days before he passed. He was really happy and healthy and everything else. And then he was gone. And he was probably the first person that I'd formed a really close bond with. He got me. He was a beautiful human being. He just, the way that he was, and the way that, there was just such an outpouring of love for him wherever he went. I miss him terribly. And strangely, I live in South West London now. I'm very close to Battersea Park. And one of the last times I saw him was in Battersea Park. And I remember the spot, leaning against the barrier. We were talking. In fact, I have a photo of him that I took in that very spot. And I walked past it this morning before we come here. But it brings me joy now. I've worked with a lot of that. So anyway, so I'd had this loss. I had all this loss as a kid. I'd had this loss.
Mm-hmm.
Done this amazing coaching course. I was trying to be this generic coach, and it just wasn't working with me. And then I worked with somebody completely. I was on a training course. It was another training course after Animas, and you have to work with another coach.
Mm.
And she had all this stuff, all this grief, and we just had the most amazing session. And it was that light bulb moment. It was like, this is the thing. This is the thing. This is what I'm here to do. It was incredible. And everything changed. Everything changed.
It inspired you.
Yeah, yeah. Everything changed. It was the thing. It was the thing. Um, and I went on from there. And then I used to host a grief circle for a little while as well, which was amazing. And I've met lots of people through doing that. But then the last part of the jigsaw, because I need to bring this to an end. All these years, all these difficult years, I've had this real deep connection to my spirituality. Really, you touched on the experience that you had after Sophie passed. That's been a constant for me, and I think sometimes we use these things as we move through life. If there's difficult stuff, we find something that we can anchor into. But it was my dirty secret. I've read tarot cards since I was 16. I'm nearly 60. Just every day. And I'm deeply spiritual. It's really important to me, and I'm fascinated by other people's spirituality and the things that they find that help them, that give them support. And whether that's organized religion or their own version of spirituality or whatever practice, things like yoga and breath work. And I'm a voracious cold water swimmer. That's my happy place. Give me some cold water. But it's always been a secret. It's always been a secret. I've just kept it. I had a conversation with someone maybe end of last year who's fairly well known in the esoteric world. She's an amazing human being. And she said to me, you're a witch. And I'm like, no, I don't know. And she's like, no, you are. Well, you're a witch, wise. You're wise. That you've come into this part of your life where you've been young and you've been a father, and now you're this kind of wise old dude that's kind of been around and seen some stuff. And she's like, you should just really embrace it. And I'm like, no. I've seen those shops. I've seen all that stuff, and it's not me. And she's like, just be who you are. And it was probably the best advice that she could give me. So to cut a long story long, over the last few months, I've kind of started to incorporate some of my spirituality into my coaching. Not for me, but to give people the opportunity to bring whatever they want into the space. I looked at a lot of the work of Carl Jung and the way that he worked with tarot and that type of stuff within the work that he did, and I really that really resonates with me. But the reason I bring it into space is so that my clients understand that there's nothing's off limits, because I think we get that sometimes with coaches. If you have some deeply held spiritual beliefs, or especially around loss and grief and death. I'm the guy that wants to talk about dying all the time. Melanie knows this.
I also love to talk about dying, but not as much as you, Andy.
No, nobody likes talking about dying as much as me. You know, for me, it's the big constant in life. You know, and as soon as we accept that, then we really start living. You know, once we realise that we've got in this form, we've got a finite.
Yeah.
Then we live. But listen, let's not start that because we've been on here a
We
while.
have this as a topic for one of
Yeah,
our sessions. Yes.
future dates. But so that's as short as I could get it for you.
I mean, thank you so much for sharing, Andy. I'm really, really touched. And it's also the first time for me today that I'm hearing about your adoption. It really touched me, moved me, because I can really not imagine how this must feel and what you have been through. But I'm so impressed by the way you discovered your life and your passions and how they came to you somehow, and that you were also open for it, you know, like open for a change. And this is what I think a lot of people fear, is change and trying something new, something what they have never done before. And you did it a couple of times, and this is
More than a couple.
and this is absolutely amazing. And you found your passion, and this is what counts, you know. And it's a very, very touching story, also about the loss of your friend. I mean, you need to maybe tell us another time a little bit more in detail how you grieved at the end for him. I think this could be something really interesting to know, but maybe we'll keep this as an example for a next session. The work we do is also a bit self-healing. So for me, it's quite strong to listen to stories of others of loss. So makes me sometimes appreciate what I'm having and what I've been through. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, listen, this has been amazing. I've no idea how long this has gone on, but I think, you know, we should probably say goodbye because
We should probably say goodbye and exactly, and leave all the other topics for our next sessions, right?
really amazing. But let's say goodbye, and I can't wait to do the next one. It's going to be fantastic. It's so exciting.
So exciting. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us, Finding Light in Grief. We hope our conversation today brought you some comfort and insight. Remember, grief is a journey, and it's okay to take it one step at a time. We're here to walk you through it all. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others who might benefit. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so feel free to reach out to us on social media. All the details are in the show notes, along with links to both of our websites, where you'll find plenty of resources alongside details of our coaching offerings. Until next time, keep finding light in the darkness, take care and be gentle with yourself. We are Melanie and Andy, and this is Finding Light in Grief.